That went off before it started. That's the phone reminder, people. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Meridian Transportation Commission meeting of December the 4th. It is 3:31 p.m. and we'll start with a roll call. David Ballard. Mr. Shoemaker.
Here.
Mr. Lancaster. I am present. Mr. Hopkins is traveling, I was told. Mr. Lewis. Here. Mr. Smith.
Here.
LeClaire. Ayun Song.
Here.
Ex officios, Mr. Wasson.
Present.
Ms. Klopfenstein.
Present.
David Reinhardt is not here, but we have someone that's occupying his chair very well. We were told that you would be here in a couple of months when you got up to speed. I think you're a little faster than people think. Welcome back, Miranda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Taysom? And Mr. Price? Okay, before we go any further, I have to ask Mr. Song a question.
Yes, sir.
About your absence last month.
Yes.
You were not here. And I was told that you had a good reason, and I would like for you to explain why you were not here, please.
So I was lucky enough to be chosen as one of the featured soloists for the Boise Philharmonic Youth Orchestra. And I had my first rehearsal for my solo piece that will be in concert March 2nd at CUNA High School. So I was absent last month.
I don't know if we need to have a vote on whether or not that's an acceptable excuse or not, but if you would send us an email prior, 2 or 3 weeks prior to that concert, I would appreciate it. I know I would like to attend, and maybe some of the others.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I just for the record want to let you know Ms. Taysom and Mr. Price are online in Zoom. I just didn't promote them to be panelists in time, but they have joined us remotely.
Okay, so we're good now? Okay. Okay, next item is the adoption of the agenda. Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second by Mr. Song. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is the approval of the minutes of November 6th. Comments, questions, motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir, Mr. Lewis.
I move that we approve the meeting minutes from.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Discussion? Mr. Hood, on page 5, speaking of the minutes, the third paragraph that starts VRT is very excited. That first sentence is a little confusing to me, and I have a suggestion to clean it up. I would propose it read, VRT is very excited with new CEO Elaine Clegg coming on board in her vision, all the exciting stuff, period. So VRT actually ended up increasing the budget, adding more service, and improving investments. And then the changes in the next sentence, VRT is shifting the bus stop signage color scheme. So after shifting and before color, add the bus stop signage. And then moving on to a frequency-based color scheme, and this is part of a new overall signage program. Anyone have anything else? Being nothing, we have a motion and a second. I would Assume that the motion and second would accept the proposed change. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. The next item. Transportation project updates, Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This month's transportation projects update memo begins on page 7 of the packet. Honestly, not a whole lot of bold this month, so not a whole lot to share. But if there are any of the projects listed or not listed that you want to talk about, feel free to let me know or bring them up here after my brief outline presentation here. Avoid Lake Hazel, I guess on page 8, it seems like it's been closed off and on and will be kind of going forward as developer cooperative project is occurring south of town. I think just fast forwarding then a couple of things that I want to call to your attention. We do have some guests with us today that will speak on the Linda Road concept project. So I won't belabor that topic, but that is moving forward. And then the one that really, I guess, has some meat to discuss is Commissioner Leclerc and myself were part of a meeting last Thursday, I believe it was, with MDC's parking consultant. It was a sub-consultant to their overall destination downtown plan. They are wrapping that up. But in talking with Mr. Leclerc late last week, he was going to put a little finer point on that project within the project. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Leclerc.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is on. Okay. Well, this group started meeting about last March, and we had Zoom meetings and together meetings and about once a month. What I think is driving this is there's so much change coming in downtown Meridian that we want to have some kind of management of parking beyond what exists today, as we think it's going to get, there's going to be more and more demand. And so this group, these consultants have done this before in other cities. They've put together about 40 items that are action items. And the feedback at the meeting on Thursday was, you know, the items are not bad, most of them, but the project ordering of them was off. And so some of the things were like pass a new city code to accommodate this parking management district and a new parking manager. Kind of before even working with all the entities involved that are involved in parking. The MDC has urban renewal districts that affect how streets and parking lots are managed and how they appear, how they're lighted, how it's consistent with the downtown destination image that we want. And so they have a role, and then the city, of course, would have an enforcement role, and that enforcement would generate income and all the processes of that. And eventually, as the parking management expands, then we're going to need some kind of a residential program. Anyway, there's, like I said, there's like 3 dozen or so things to do. And the feedback was that it wasn't the right order. We need to get a cooperative process first with the entities involved, and then it will take time to do code changes and to go through this group and the commission. It probably not be done in 12 months. And so that's all being redone. They'll be redrafted, and we'll see a revised final draft of this project December 15th, they say. And so we may hear more about this in January and February There is an outreach component to this. And so I will work to get someone to present to us on these final recommendations as they come out. So that's sort of an overview of what we've done. I've talked a little bit about how they educated us on optimum parking capacities and all the stuff we did, but we don't need all that detail today. We're going to look for these final recommendations in the next few weeks. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Friday.
You believe that could happen at our next meeting?
It could be on the January meeting, yes.
Okay, and you'll
The holidays.
and
you know,
you'll
throw it
and you'll
off.
track it to see if it needs to be. Okay.
Yeah, and so, well, yeah, I'll be in touch.
Questions from anyone?
All right, thank you all.
A
Anything I missed, Caleb,
question from Mr. Hood. How do you know how occupied these new residences are to the north of City Hall? That it's hard to tell just looking at them. I know there's some people in, or there are enough people in there to start noticing a difference in what's going on downtown, both pedestrian and car wise.
Mr. Chair, first part of your question, I do not actually know how many of the units are occupied. Anecdotally, I was at the Christmas parade on Friday night, and there were several people that were watching the parade from their units. So just based on the number of lights I saw on there, 80% of those were even on, and that some people just may not have been home. But no, they're all have certificate of occupancy, but I don't know how they're doing as far as the lease rates and those types of things. And then the second part of your question, and again, it's anecdotal. I haven't done any parking counts or anything since. I haven't personally noticed any difference in the availability of parking in the couple of block radius of the lofts. Maybe others have a different experience, but that's my take, being a city employee that looks at it and has to fight for parking like others do sometimes. I really haven't seen that much of a difference.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I worked for a hospital decades ago, and the administrator of the small hospital I was at, he would take this occupancy of the large Catholic hospital up on the hill by looking at the lights in the rooms at 7:30 at night. So probably a good way to tell it. Okay, moving on, the next item is Linder Road, Pine to Eustic Concept Report Update. Mr. Hood, you want to introduce that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just briefly, and in fact, I won't even introduce the item. I'll just reintroduce you to Brian McClure, City Planning Division. And I will also just note for the record that we have Commissioner Lancaster that joined us here recently. Brian, what? Presentate the PowerPoint presentation. That's.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. While Caleb is pulling that up, I'll just note that we have Brooke Green from ACHD and Pearson behind her. He's works with HDR, and he's a consultant helping ACHD with the project. Sorry, Pearson DeWitt.
That open. That's not the right document.
I guess while Caleb's pulling that up, this is an information briefing on Linder Road. You stick to Cherry, generally Pine. I'm sorry, you stick to Pine generally. As I noted, Brooke and Pearson are behind me. They can help with any questions. I'm just sort of helping. The objective of this is to provide you a glimpse of corridor concepts going out to the public beginning tomorrow evening. we would invite you and ask you to participate in that effort. There are 3 concepts that are going to the public, which include enhancements for the entire corridor. However, today's presentation will focus only on elements between Sandalwood and Chateau. The reason for that being is this is a fairly new treatment, especially to Meridian, and we just want you to have an awareness of that. This segment in a pinch is sort of between existing 5-lane sections. To address the constraint, ACHD is introducing this new concept.
Space bar or? Advance it.
The study area, 124. Oh, that's good, sorry. The study area, as I mentioned, is no further than Ustick and no further than Pine Avenue. Some of these areas have seen improvements and are being preserved in part or in whole. Local attractors along the corridor include Tully Park on the east side, Barbara Morgan Elementary School on the west side, and Meridian High School also on the west side. As previously noted, and just for emphasis, today's presentation will focus on the section between Chateau and Sandalwood. And then again, just a note, public involvement is starting tomorrow. We would invite you to participate in that. So Linder Road is a regional corridor with one of the few Boise River crossings. When the I-84 overpass is constructed, it will be the longest north-south continuous roadway in Ada County. The ACHD project team hopes to realize improved residential arterial improvements for all users, including enhancements to both bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, and that realizes traffic level of stress of either 1 or 2. Outreach, and I'm going to emphasize this here, outreach has been continuous and a huge component of this project. Brooke Green has held evening one-on-one meetings multiple times with everyone who lives within this section or is planning to, between Sandalwood and Chateau. ACHD does not usually have this level of involvement for a concept level study. This has also been reviewed as part of the ACHD Pedestrian Advisory Work Group that has included a few, that included a few ACHD commissioners as well as former city staff. Next slide. This segment of Linder between Pine and Ustick was priority number 7 for the city in the 2024-2028 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan. This project is the middle project between 2 others. On the south is Linder Road overland to Franklin, which includes the bridge over the I-84, and on the north is, to the north further, is Shinden to State Highway 44. Linder to the south will be 5 lanes, and Shinden north will be 5 to 7 lanes. As mentioned before, 3 concepts will be developed in total. 2 of the alternatives incorporate a shared residential street, which is sort of the new element here. Some would also consider this a frontage road, but it's also shared. ACHD is currently has a similar treatment on Whitewater Park Boulevard in Boise. I'm not sure if that's actually ACHD owned or not, but it's next to their facility. A shared road is exactly what it sounds like and accommodates vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians in the same space. Safety is important and would incorporate traffic calming, additional signage, and textured surfaces. Many details would still be worked out in construction design later on. For Linder and the focus segment, shared use roads would be bookended by 2 new roundabouts at Sandalwood and Chateau, ensuring easy local access while removing backup parking concerns, not just on the roadway, but what would otherwise be a multi-use pathway. Next one. For this slide and in the next 3 slides, just to note that these graphics are not final, so don't pay too much attention outside of the cross-section width. Concept 1 of 3 is 3 lanes, 1 in each direction, and a center turn lane. It also includes shared use roads on both sides between Sandalwood and Chateau. and a couple bookended by one-lane roundabouts at those intersections. Summarized benefits include the fewest impacts to existing properties, reduced congestion with designated left lanes, and enhanced speed management with medians, roundabouts, and landscape improvements with the city participation. Summarized challenges include required merging for drivers on the north and south, and changes to how residents use their property. Do also, and I've let ACHD know this, want to point out that city staff have some concerns with some of the modeling that went into these. This is not anything against the engineers. This is the back-end data that's built on that. So the long-range transportation model is known to be missing some entitlements on this corridor and some attractors. So that's not necessarily for tonight. I want you to focus on that, but if it comes up later, as we get into construction design, don't be surprised if it does. Concept 2 is a fairly standard 5-lane configuration and includes 2 lanes in each direction, center turn lane, and multi-use pathways. Summarized benefits include slightly improved travel times along the studded corridor area, reduced conflicts, and improved access for local residents. Summarized challenges include the largest footprint of any of the concepts, the largest impacts to the number of properties, and reduced effect on congestion, and may realize increased travel speed. Concept 3 is similar to concept 1, except that it has a couplet, except that it includes a 5-lane configuration and multi-lane roundabouts instead of single-lane roundabouts as part of the couplet on Chateau and Sandalwood. Summarized benefits include slightly improved travel times along the studied corridor area, fewer property impacts than a traditional 5-lane cross-section, and enhanced speed management with medians and roundabout landscaping in coordination with the city. Summarized challenges include a wider footprint and more property acquisitions than the 3-lane concept, and changes to how properties use their access or property. This is a timeline of where we're at now, or rather this is the timeline of the project. You'll note that it started in December of 2022. We're now in the middle of the slide at December 2023, and the concept will continue into 2024. As noted, public outreach starts tomorrow. We will also be going to City Council tomorrow to have a similar conversation, and that we will be back, city staff will be back to talk to you next year sometime after public outreach. That's a quick overview. Again, I have Brooke Green here and Pearson if you guys have any questions that I can't help you with, but I would stand for questions, or we can invite them to come up.
Let's invite Ms. Green and Mr. DeWitt, if either one of them or both wish to come up and add anything.
Good afternoon. For the record, Brooke Green. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with Ada County Highway District, and I've been working on this for the last couple of years. Quickly just want to introduce our engineer consultant, Pearson DeWitt. He will answer any questions pertaining to, say, for instance, the modeling or any technical questions we want to lean to his guidance for. And for questions.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith.
I do have one question, maybe 2 questions. Looking specifically at slide 6 and 8, this kind of shared road concept, is the idea that that is going to be the same speed limit as the drive lane, or are there going to be different speed limits to account for the multi-use aspect of it?
I'm going to put this in slide.
The bottom right,
Let's get you a better image of that. So quickly, just to recap, the shared use road is a treatment that we are using already. The intent is to be able to provide access for residents who reside along Linder. In this particular case, and you can see it, you'll see that it's in one directional travel only. So say if you live on the west side and you need to go north, you will exit out onto Linder, turn through the roundabout, and then continue on up north. What we found in the interviews with the residents along this corridor is the concern about safety. Currently, as they try to back onto Linder, many of them have attested that it's incredibly nerve-wracking, not very comfortable. So the idea was to be able to provide a shared road for those residents to be able to back into a space that they can then exit. In addition to that, our shared use roadways are supposed to be low in speed, so they're not going to be the same speed as they would be on Linder, because the reality is those who should be accessing it are only the residents who reside there. This isn't some side road or frontage road that anybody else who's traveling down Linder would take. This really is to give them access, almost like a long driveway. This will too also be maintained by ACHD.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That makes sense. In terms of design, this is more just, again, as more of a layman, kind of thinking about the concept of affordance. I noticed that that multi-use or the shared road is wider than the actual drive lanes. Is there understanding that kind of more affordance tends to kind of increase drive speeds and driver behavior if they have more room to operate, creating that confidence? Is there any reason that it's not the inverse? If I guess you're just able to educate me why maybe the drive lanes aren't 12 feet and the shared use roads aren't 11 feet, vice versa.
Commissioner Seddon, Commissioner Smith, to your point, the driveway, the shared use road is to be able to accommodate a trash pickup. And so we wanted to ensure that there was enough capacity that those who needed to get through there to provide for that garbage pickup, they're able to do so. In addition to that, we will be looking into design features that would include some traffic calming elements as we get to design. In addition to that, it's pervious pavement. So the texture of that pavement is different to re-emphasize that this is a shared space where you can anticipate bikes, peds, as well as vehicles. But in reality, we're looking to, approximately 15 residents who are using this space in a day. And it really is to exit and enter their properties.
Makes plenty of sense. Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Lancaster, welcome back.
Thank you. So the cross sections shown, well, so the projects to the north and south of this project that we're talking about today, what are the cross sections on those?
Chairman and Commissioner Lancaster, to the south, it's 5 lanes. And so we are in that pinch point along the corridor. We're trying to accommodate and preserve as many homes as we can. Hence the multitude of options, whether it be 3 or 5 or 5 with a shared lane.
And same to the north, 5-lane cross section being planned to the north?
Chairman and Commissioner Lancaster, yes, that is what we anticipate. In addition, going over the overpass.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman and presenters, I guess I would be in favor of any cross sections that preserve the width throughout then. So 5 lanes throughout, including this. It's my feedback for you at the moment.
Chairman.
I have a question, and I'm sure you wouldn't propose this if they weren't. But have you got the elbow room in here to do this? I mean, how much of the front yards are you going to have to take in order to fit this? I start to say shoehorn. Let's don't do that. Just say fit this in.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Just to quickly recap of some of what you may have not seen on the previous depictions or images. The one that you have before you is our 5-lane standard for us to acquire and to align with the existing conditions that are north of U-Stick. This is what that 5 lanes, those hatch marks require purchasing of those homes. For the 3 lanes, we actually are only having to take what is already preserved. That's about 20 feet of the driveways. And for lastly, the 5 lanes with the shared use road, we're looking to preserve the homes on the west side and purchase the homes on the east side. The west side, that enables us the space to give them that shared use road so they can still navigate out of their homes. However, The trade-off is we will have to be purchasing those homes to the east. And I have had evening meetings with practically every single one of these homeowners, starting prior to the initial engagement. So we've met with almost every single one of them twice to go over this.
And if I may, they're telling you what they have now is not good. It's frightening at maybe best. They would love some relief. Does that include being bought out and having to move, the relief?
Chairman and commissioners, to speak broadly to the desires of the property owners, we're having mixed responses. I will attest that those who live on the west many of them would prefer to stay. Many of them are looking for options that would enable them to continue to reside in their homes while enhancing their livability, which we think the shared road does do that. Many on the east, with a few exceptions, have come to realize that they are likely to be purchased and have that reality has set in. It is mixed responses. Certainly, we anticipate any more feedback as we go through these engagements with them, but it's 50-50. So some would like to stay and some are happy to be bought out.
Mr. Chairman.
Does ACHD at this time have a preference?
Chairman and commissioners, no ACHD. We are putting forward 3 alternatives that the public can weigh in. We'd like the public to give us their feedback in the next 2 weeks, at which point we will regroup as a team prior to January, evaluate what the 2 alternatives were. We'll be taking 2 alternatives back to our elected officials. That includes the City of Meridian elected officials as well as ACHD.
Heard someone who.
Mr. Chairman, that was me.
Sir.
Just a question on the concept 3, which is on the screen there. Is it possible to not have on the, let's see, where are we? On the top on the west side, the shared use road on that side, it'll make it look like the east side. Reduce the raised median to maybe 4 feet and keep homes, or will that not fit either? It won't fit either.
Chairman and commissioners, I have spent endless moments looking at this, trying to figure out how many feet I can preserve in hopes to keep all the homes. And unfortunately, the reality is we had to look to what would provide for the best and the largest number of preservation of homes, while at the same time creating a space for vehicle capacity through the corridor. And this is what we've come up with. We've looked at minimizing those medians the best we can and footprint as best as we could.
Mr. Chairman.
It's kind of ugly any way you do it.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leclerc.
Thank you. This, well, I see these roundabouts and it looks like we have this deal where there's a crosswalk and then a stop line where pedestrians would walk behind a stopped vehicle. Is this just, is this hard and fast? Is that something that would be looked at later? I'm especially concerned about the Sandalwood roundabout. It looks like we're leaving houses and trees maybe there on the east side, and there might be sight distance stuff. I'm sure you engineers have looked at it, but I just thought I'd ask about, does it look safe? Does everyone like it?
Chairman and commissioners, I'm gonna speak a little bit broadly in general about the potential of acquiring some homes, and then I'm gonna look to Pearson to give you a little bit more technical background about the detail itself. But do recognize that while we're showing that we have some eminent domain or purchasings of some homes along this corridor, there are some where until we get out there in the design and we start to incorporate a little bit more of the design and the survey work, we'll have to realize if we have to purchase them or not. Pearson can speak to you about the high level renderings that you're seeing before you, whether or not we rest assured that we won't put something out there that isn't safe for pedestrians, especially seeing that this is right next to Barbara Morgan Elementary School. Pearson, do you want to add anything?
So we did investigate the basic travel speed for these for the roundabout, and they are laid out to meet design speed criteria for the corridor at a concept level. we have not looked at the intersection setbacks for that configuration because we would probably be putting the cart before the horse a little bit in terms of knowing what those acquisitions may be. So it's definitely a thing that will be investigated, but what you're seeing before us is, in our opinion, sufficient to give you a general idea what those impacts could look like.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith.
I thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Leclerc. I think one thing that I think strikes me as different is having those pedestrian islands. So you're not crossing behind a car and having to worry about another car turning in and not seeing you behind that other, there's that relief to be able to just look at one conflict point at a time for the pedestrian, which I think is helpful. And I think also broadly speaking, personally, this kind of approach for concept 3, I think I tend to favor, and specifically having that that shared path. I know it's mainly for it, it's almost entirely homeowners who in that area, but I can imagine a kid riding a bike home or something along that, and having that kind of additional separation from the main road, I think is really helpful, specifically in that location. So I really like concept 3, but just to add some personal opinion.
And these are not stop signs, they're yield signs. So they tend to clear fairly quickly. I've got one of these right near my house, and we've used this type of crosswalk, and it seems to work. It's crazy enough that people really look and pay attention to what's going on and what they can and can't do, or should or shouldn't do, I guess. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman. So thank you for putting this plan view back up. So this situation seems similar to Meridian Road back a few years ago when it was widened from 2 lanes to 5 lanes. At least as far as, older neighborhood houses that driveway is right off of the arterial street. So why a different treatment here than what was done on Meridian Road a few years ago?
Chairman and Commissioners, I'm not familiar with the project that was conducted a couple years ago pertaining to Meridian. Maybe I could look to our Meridian staff, but I cannot tell you why they chose their direction, which they did. For our case, I can tell you we were looking to come up with an innovative approach to be able to preserve as many homes as we could, especially in the economy in which we're in. Preservation of as many homes as we could was one of the first things that we wanted to attempt to do. While we recognize we may not be able to achieve that, the public may weigh in different. What we wanted to do is provide menu of options to the public to weigh in on, whether it be the 5-lane standard, which would be similar to what you would see there on Meridian Road or north of Ustick, or the shared use road concept with the 5 lanes, still trying to preserve as many homes as we could. So what we wanted to do to commissioners and chairman was just provide a menu of options that the public could help us and give us some sort of direction on what they'd like to see. In addition to that, we wanted to do a little bit more emphasis on our public engagement with the property owners and find out what the desires were of the property owners who resided along the corridor and see if we could accommodate as many of them as we could.
Mr. Chair, John Wasson, Ada County Highway District. I'd just like to add that as time goes by, best practices for every art changes, whether that's traffic control or surgery. And so where we might not have installed roundabouts or traffic circles on Meridian Road 15 or 20 years ago when it was designed, we are now installing more of them because, and Pearson, please correct me if I'm wrong, the design approach speed to a roundabout is 0 miles an hour. Because if there's somebody in that roundabout, you have to stop and yield to them. And so times change.
I would never correct you if you were wrong.
Mr. Hood mentioned to me that there was a section of this length of road down near the high school that has houses on one side and some tight or inability to expand to the high school side. Is that part of this public input, or is that a separate problem?
Chairman and Commissioners, the whole corridor from Pine to Ustick is under consideration for public engagement. What you're seeing today is just one segment along the corridor. I will tell you the rest of the corridor has a multi-use pathway for all three concepts, continuing on in both directions. If there's another pinch point closer to the high school, I know that there's several residents right there. We're able to do 3 or 5 lanes in either case throughout the whole corridor with the existing footprint, or taking back some of what our preservations was of our existing right of way.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
is there a way for people like on the commission to be involved in this public engagement, or is it just the people that are affected by this construction?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. You're all welcome to participate. It goes live tomorrow in a virtual open house and somewhat of a survey. You'll see a story map that'll walk you through the whole corridor itself. In addition to that, provide an opportunity for you to provide comments in a survey format. The public engagement has been one-on-one with these property owners because it doesn't matter what option we bring forward, it will have impacts to their property, and we wanted to have that one-on-one conversation with them and our right-of-way agent.
So the public part tomorrow is virtual only,
Chairman and Commissioners, yes, it is a virtual only, and it goes live for 2 weeks.
2
So
weeks. Okay.
many invite folks to participate. We'd love to get a lot of feedback.
Mr.
Please.
Chairman, I have another question, and this one is school related. So it was, it was mentioned, part of the reason for some of these design alternatives was proximity to Barbara Morgan School. So I'll again compare that to Meridian Road, where there's a school zone on Meridian Road, as Meridian Element. Yet the school district buses all students that live on the opposite side of Meridian. So it seems like there's not a big school need, if you will, there. And so I wonder what it's like here. So Miranda, welcome back on this side of the room now, but, or back over there, I guess. But do you know offhand, or are you still getting back to the school district? But what does busing and whatnot look like?
So generally, Mr. Chair, so generally at an elementary level, we don't have a hard and fast rule on it, but generally we don't have elementary students cross a 5-lane road. Roundabouts are new to our community, so crossing a roundabout might look different because they aren't crossing 5 conflict points at once. They're crossing 2. In the case of Barbara Morgan, we're still evaluating what busing is going to look like for them next year, so it's really hard to say. But I will say, whether the district buses or not, most of our schools, even if students have a bus, still have kids that choose to walk to school, regardless of whether we provide the vehicle for them to get there or not. So we do our best to make sure that we're busing, we evaluate, make sure we're busing students that can't safely walk to school, but regardless, they're going to walk to school. And then schools are also used after school hours as playgrounds and community meetup places. They have events that they hold and we rent out to the community. And so those need safe access, regardless of whether it's pickup drop-off time, they need safe access after school as well.
So, Mr. Chairman, so, given the district's busing practices, it seems like strong school considerations are not necessarily, need to necessarily be top. I understand after school activities and that sort of thing, but at that point, big fields at schools and such, they start to become more like parks than schools. And, not the same consideration given at parks, and there probably should be So I guess I wouldn't make a decision based primarily on full impact. That may or may not be there.
Another question that I've just thought of, speaking of primary considerations, how many or how few properties have to be acquired enter into the weighting of the decision?
Chairman and commissioners, and let me just clarify.
Of all the bad choices?
All the bad choices, if we were to purchase, if we were to go with the largest impact, we're approximately 21 homes. The largest impact being that the 5-lane standard section that you see north of Ustick now. It lessens when we start to look to the 5 lanes with the shared use roadway. We're probably, I want to anticipate maybe 13 to 12. Do recognize that some of these homes are duplexes, so they're 2 homes in one. However, majority of the duplexes, I will tell you, they reside on the west side, whereas single-family residents are usually more predominant on the east side.
Anything else? Anything else from the presenters?
Chairman and commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present before you today. Certainly want to encourage you to share the link for folks to participate in this. As I mentioned, it'll be open for 2 weeks, at which point we'll regroup as a team. As I highlighted and was highlighted by the presenter, we'll go back before our commission next spring. I can't tell you whether or not we're going to have another public engagement. It'll all determined based off of this public engagement and what we get as feedback. I will tell you 2 options will be taken to both elected bodies for both of them in which to weigh in, and we anticipate adoption early June or late June.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the ACHD Capital Roadway Improvement Guide. Mr. McClure is going to do that one as well. Welcome back.
Commissioner Steed, if it's okay, can I make a comment on the last one?
Sure, please.
So just before that goes to city council, make sure that the Transportation Commission gets to weigh in on that, so city council knows where your guys' feedback may lie after they've had the public involvement.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners, I'm here to discuss ACHD Capital Improvement Guide. I will likely go back and forth calling this the matrix and the Capital Improvement Guide several times, so I apologize in advance. So, sorry. Briefly, we'll do background policy framework, which involves ACHD policy, the guide, which includes the introduction and matrix and an appendice, and then next step, which is to use it. This is a brief overview of the city's involvement in ACHD's capital projects, which includes roadways and intersections. It does not include bridges or some of the assorted overlays they have. Long-range planning is generally lead for coordination for those projects, beginning in cost of design and then going through 99%, at which point Public Works typically takes those over. Public Works is generally also involved throughout. Once initiated, projects on average are 5 or so years. That includes concept design, right away, and then the start of construction. In this period, a lot of change occurs. There isn't a project I've been involved with that hasn't seen significant changes on a section line road. Major changes are sometimes political and sometimes they're engineering. As previously noted, engineering standards change over time. A perfect example of that is Locust Grove that was recently constructed. Originally, that was designed for sidewalks and bike lanes. And then at the last minute after construction had been 100% was changed to pathways. Some of that was political, but the change occurred. Cost change, timing changes, and construction materials change. And all those can have bigger impacts when you aggregate them. These are all things that can understandably give city council pause when they're asked to participate in an ACHD project because they're making financial commitment years in advance, which is sort of why we created this guide. I look at policy with ACHD. There's several interrelated reasons for this matrix. The first is that ACHD will not or cannot install landscaping. There's exceptions there, for example, with rainwater gardens, detention basins, retention basins. Those things vary, but they do sometimes install landscaping with them. There's opportunities to enhance roadways in meaningful ways for bicycles and pedestrians that include elements outside of those things. So we can use landscaping improvements and other improvements ACG is not allowed to do or will not do to enhance those things to improve user comfort. The cost share is that we have with them is a process in their policy that allows us to participate with that. It's a formal process. We have to have our council sign it and then their commission signs it. It's legally binding. Documents change, but it is sort of legally binding once we sign that. The cost share allows the city to support enhanced projects by committing to projects in advance so that when ACHD goes through the process of designing these, they know that we're going to actually be part of it and we're not going to say, never mind later on, and then cost them a bunch of time and money and redesign efforts. This is a newer sort of interpretation of their policy, but they are now also willing to reimburse us for elements that they would otherwise install through the cost share policy. So if they are going to install stamped concrete and we decide to do vegetation, trees, a different type of rockscape, we will now get credited the cost of that concrete and we can apply that to whatever we're going to do to improve it. Our goal with this tool is to better enable, is to improve communication, to establish expectations that council can use to get a better comfort level with these projects. And then to make a commitment that both sides agree to improve consistency. The matrix really has two parts. So I said it had three parts, but really has two parts that are used. The appendix is the third one. In some ways, the introduction is just as important as the matrix, which is sort of the communication piece we have with ACHD. The introduction is memorializes a lot of the reasons why we're doing this, and it helps to improve institutional knowledge, which is an issue for all agencies and elected officials. This also highlights opportunities in ACHD to actually partner. It's sort of it's not a sales pitch, but it helps us all to sort of remember those things when we're talking about them. I can also say that ACHD has been excited to use this and they have brought it up. They've brought it up multiple times in project meetings. The matrix or the concepts is the second piece. That's a visual. So there's two parts there. There's the matrix and then there's sort of cut sheets following it. The matrix is the real critical piece that we use for identifying who's doing what and in what conditions. The cut sheets help to provide some just graphic representations that people can better sort of relate with. This is a look at a matrix. It's one of two. So we have one for the roadway, and then when we have one for roundabout intersections, the roadway one would cover the standard signalized intersections because we typically don't change the lane configuration until you get to a certain point where you're impacting vision triangles or you're adding lanes and impacting vision triangles. At that point, we wouldn't put landscaping or anything in there anyway. So it's really roadways and then intersections that are roundabouts. On the left side, you'll see, on the left side here, you'll kind of see configurations for intersections. So whether there's going to be 3 lanes, 5 lanes, 3 lanes with medians, without medians. And then just next to that, you'll see baseline improvements. Those are what ACHD will do if the city's not involved at all. And then columns 1 through 4 after those are what partnership would look like if the city's involved. These are typicals. They're not cast in stone, but they provide general, again, sort of level of comfort for city council when they're making a financial commitment years in advance. Level 1 is not bad and level 4 is not good. They just are opportunities in different conditions with different context. This is an example of a cut sheet. We have one of these for every cell on the matrix. Again, this is just sort of a visual to help people understand what they're talking about when this is being discussed, or what we're talking about when this is being discussed. Plant palettes, tree types, stamped concrete patterns, colors, those are all things that may or may not change on a project. Generally, though, the coverage areas that those things occupy and the intent behind them is important. I will also say something that's important here is the rhythm and repetition. So all of these things are also intended to help with speed management, which has been important for ACHD, and it's something that they found difficult to address or do, unable to do landscaping. So you'll see when they're trying to attempt this, generally you'll see they'll do medians, which sort of gets there. And when they need to take that a step further, they'll do a rail in the median or on the side. You'll sort of see that with roundabouts now. But that's pretty much the extent of what they've done so far to address speed management outside of the constructed materials they're allowed to use. As I mentioned before, the next step for this is sort of use it. City Council has been very happy with that. We've taken sort of their feedback, which is generally to do it on so far U-Stick, Linder, Black Cat, as sort of came up earlier, Black Cat and McMillan. We haven't sort of applied it on other projects like Franklin, which City Council has not been interested in participating on. We haven't applied it to Eagle Road, which City Council has not been interested in applying it on. So it's really sort of City Council discretion when we use this. But when we do use this, we're trying to steer towards these sort of predetermined scenarios so that ACHD knows how to sort of budget this and they can consider it when they're doing their design process. With that, I'll stand for any questions if you have them.
I have one right off the bat. Black Cat and Macmillan on the slide that's up at the moment. Macmillan is not going to be a 5-lane street, according to what we've been told.
Which side are you looking at?
The last one you were on, you there. Projects considering these treatments, Ustick, Linder, which I understand both, but Black Cat and Macmillan. Macmillan is to be a
So
3-lane per ACHD, right, Mr. Watson?
Commissioner President, if I can just tell you that, so the graphic there is perhaps not appropriate. That's just a graphic. It has nothing to do with what's being designed there. That's a roundabout being designed there, not a roadway expansion.
But all of your earlier cross sections showed at least 4 lanes, right? With a median?
They typically show 5 lanes. 3 lanes are viable options then as well. It depends on whether there's speed management desire there.
Thank you. Questions?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Smith?
Just, I guess, quick question. I noticed looks like across the series, level 2 seems to do away with the landscape aspect. I noticed in the cut sheets and in the matrix. Could you speak to that, why that is?
Commission President, Commissioner Smith, we had a consultant helping us with this project and they felt strongly that we should have some options that didn't include planted material. I don't expect that level 2 will be used all that often.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just an opening thought. I like the guide. I think it's a great idea to have written down something that we've wanted to do for a long time. There's only one thing I'm in disagreement with in the appendix and the matrices. There are a lot of references to large boulders and rock boulders, and in the images it has them right in the planter strip. It has them in the central island of roundabouts, and those are a hazard, and those should not be there. I recommend removing that language from the guide.
Commission President, Commissioner Lewis, believe it or not, ACHD was very supportive of having those boulders in there. The purpose of those boulders is to protect pedestrians and bicyclists, and they would rather have a car hit a boulder than hit a pedestrian. That's the reason they're in there. I was surprised initially that they were in support of those boulders, but their engineering team over and over again was okay with that. So
I disagree, but we'll leave it there.
Mr. Chairman,
Lancaster?
I concur with Commissioner Lewis. That seems to go against what the roadside design guide says as far as hazards in the clear zone. So, Mr. Chairman, a question. Are you seeking feedback on this document today, or are you presenting it to us for our information?
This is Commission President, Commissioner Lancaster. This is a staff document. It's something we can change and modify as needed. The primary intent is the overall cross-section, and when the city will partner with ACHD, some of the design elements are not hard and fast. I'm certainly happy to take any feedback if you have any, but I wouldn't get hung up on the details too much.
Anything from anyone else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is number 5, parking restriction policy, Movado example. Mr. Hood, why don't we let you do that one?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not quite sure, commissioners, exactly where you want to take this. It could go a couple of different ways. I will share with you, though, at the outset, I want to have a conversation and get your input on how the city, in consultation with ACHD, and I'll pause right there and say the city, meaning anyone at the city and its employees, how should we approach requests for parking restrictions? You get these from time to time. We've had some off of Overland near the movie theater this last year. Again, it's not new, but this last month, I think there's been 4 that have come up on my plate. And I just put one as an example, and we can get into that one if you'd like. Actually, there's a couple of them, one even at the end of your packet from up near Linder and Chinden. So that's another one in downtown. So again, there's a handful of these. And really what I'm hoping to get out of this discussion, this agenda item anyways, is your thoughts on process and how much, if at all, you want to be involved in these parking restriction requests or petitions when they come in, either to me, to the mayor's office, to ACHD, to our police department, to anyone. Is this above the Transportation Commission to talk about parking? Is this something you want to be the first stop in? Again, just in an ideal world, how would you like to address? We can talk about both within the right of way, but also on private property requests. They may have a little bit different answer there. But again, just at a high level, parking is inherent to transportation, motor vehicles anyways. You got to park them somewhere. So I see it being associated with your charge, but again, how much of these do you all want to get involved with? I guess that's how I'd phrase this question. And then we can jump into the Movado one if you'd like. But again, we get petitions, if you will, or questions or concerns or complaints about parking quite frequently. And again, some of them filter down to me, some of them don't. They bypass me and it happens. So again, that's kind of teeing up the conversation. And Mr. Chair, I know you're familiar with this topic, so I will again defer to you to add any to that or take this whatever direction you'd like to take it.
If you've gotten 4 in the past month, we only meet once a month. As much as we might like to really get into this and have some fun, what's that going to do to the process? Does it mean that these are going to take up an entire meeting for us to deal with 4 in a single month, or are they going to get pushed such that the requester feels like they're not getting any attention? You and I haven't talked about that part of this. What's your feeling on that? I know that city planning, I don't think I'm speaking out of school. City planning is kind of wondering what's going on when requests go to the PD and the PD answers them and says yes, no, or they go to the mayor's office and somebody says yes, no, or pick another place. And y'all either hear about it after the fact or by the time you hear about it, it's pretty well decided. Now what do? And then Transportation Commission is sitting out here up on the dais once a month. So I understand the broad question. Can you drill down a little bit further to help us?
So, Mr. Chair, I guess
give you some reaction.
I mean, there is, I guess, some potential that this could eat up your agenda. I think this is a little abnormal to have 4 that have come on my radar in 30 days or so. But it happens. It happened this month. That process, though, in general, again, those 4 that came to me, many of them have been in the works talking with PD or the mayor's office or ACHD for months. So it's not like they just all of a sudden came up as issues and we've got a problem and a solution within 30 days. It's some of them have been brewing for multiple months and I just learned about them. So I think to maybe some of the heart of some of your question anyway, I think if the Transportation Commission is a part of whatever that is, I don't think that really delays anything because this isn't typically anything that's a knee jerk. Someone requests something and the next day we see no parking signs, although I know Mr. Watson would love to put them out next day. You know, it does take some time. There's analysis that happens, there's signs that have to be made and installed and all that. So if the Transportation Commission wants to be part of these, I could see them being 1, maybe 2 a month. I don't even know that the volume would be there for that. So again, your first question, I don't think this is going to dominate your agendas necessarily, but it's a thing. And I don't know how many may come on your radar, but I don't think you slow that process or whatever process we think is ideal. I don't think you slow that down. I think you can be a cog in that wheel if there's an interest. There are other folks that are, and I'll just say as sort of an aside, many of you have probably already noticed, but Sergeant Smith is not here today. At least a couple of those 4, she's been involved with and done an investigation on. So she's been even in the know and they've been looking at those things and have their own analysis and recommendations that they've already been building up as a department. So, you know, again, if the Transportation Commission says, no, we trust the other powers that be to look into this and do the right thing. Again, there's half a dozen entities, some of them all within Meridian, that are already looking at these things. So it really is, that's where I kind of wanted to start again. If that's your wish, we can put these on your agendas and I don't think it's going to dominate.
Commissioners, thoughts?
Mr. Chair.
Go
For most of my tenure in the Transportation Commission, we've been working on the Lost Rapids kind of parking issue. And I think we were successful in being productive by connecting with ACHD as an advisory board. So I think in my personal experience with the commission, I think it is very valuable to give our input on some of these issues that may pop up just through my experience.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Someone else, Mr. Smith.
Yeah, question for Caleb. I guess if you, super broad ballpark, if you had to kind of annualize on a monthly basis, is it usually maybe once a month or so? Or, you know, what does it tend to look like on kind of on net?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. So it's a little tough to answer that. And again, I think this past month may be an outlier. You know, maybe Ms. Carson would be better to answer that because I'm just starting to get back in that workflow, if you will, of seeing these come on. But I think maybe once a month is a pretty good ballpark.
Ms. Carson?
Yeah, so parking, of course, is something I'm glad I don't have to be too familiar with anymore, in all honesty. But I do think that this commission, as Commissioner Song said, weighing in on parking issues, maybe not necessarily this is an advisory commission. So not holding up the process. There's already process at ACHD. There's already a process at the city, but I think the input that the commission gives on parking when it's brought to you is definitely helpful. I think it's also helpful for the community to have a place that they can come and air those concerns. So there were times that city council pushed issues back to Transportation Commission to get the input from this group. So I think it's something that city council does want TC's input on. And I think it can also help when you have a little bit of weight from even an advisory body to get those things forward as a citizen who's making a request. So I definitely think it's worth TC taking some time to look at the few that come up every year.
And any thought or memory on what the quantity of these could be?
I would say 4 in 1 month is pretty unusual. If I had to guess, I would say maybe we get the city, not we anymore. Maybe the city gets 4 to 6 a year. So it's not usual to get 4 in 1 month. And then sometimes even if you get 4, sometimes they're pretty minor and easy to address. Somebody walked in at one point when I was working for the city and just wanted to talk about parking because their parking was being converted to a bike lane. Didn't necessarily need to come to the commission. It had already been decided. They just needed some help with it. So just because somebody comes in with a parking concern doesn't necessarily mean they need the commission to weigh in on it, but I definitely think it's something you could be aware of.
Mr. Hood, do you envision the commission getting all of these or being an appeal court where someone comes to planning, PD, mayor's office, pick a place, and doesn't like the answer they got?
Mr. Chair, it's a good question. I'm going to kind of punt that answer to some degree to you all because I thought about it, but I don't know that I have a preference in that. I do think, as Ms. Carson just mentioned, I think you probably do play a role. I don't think it's everything. No, I don't think it's the example she just brought up of someone wants to understand the change from parking to bike lane. I don't see directing them to you and say, hey, go complain to the Transportation Commission, although I could see appeals to some degree coming to the commission if that's the role that you wanted to play. I want to put maybe a little bit more context into my opening remarks as we continue this discussion. Process was used in some of that. And that's, I think, at the heart of this issue. We don't really have an established process. And maybe why Ms. Carson only saw 4 to 6 a year is because they're getting taken care of through other means that, again, half of 2 of the 4 that I'm aware of now weren't on my radar and were otherwise being taken care of, one by ACHD and one by our police department. And we said, hold on a minute, what are you doing? And we said, hey, you know, why isn't there a broader net being cast to ask these questions? So I don't know that that's the case, but I know that the frequency is more than what we know in planning or you know, as a Transportation Commission, because some of these are just being handled and signs are being put up or striping's being done or whatever the case may be, and it's just being handled. So I think when there is a change, and again, I can't tell you exactly, I'll note when I see it, what's Transportation Commission appropriate and not? Is it something at staff level? It's a conversation. I don't need to share that with you all that, hey, I had a conversation with someone. But when there is a real question, I think we could direct them and say, hey, this commission meets the first Monday of every month. You want to come and make a case? And that's part of a process then that goes to, you know, and again, police is here typically, so they can be part of that, or maybe it's a separate discussion with a subcommittee of the police department or whatever. But again, that process and really establishing that at least internally and with ACHD, all the patrol sergeants and everybody understands, hey, when you get this type of a request, here's what you do with it.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the thing that stands out to me specifically is the fact that kind of currently without a process, that, you know, the right hand doesn't know what the left's doing. Parking's a bit of a whack-a-mole, and it's almost like we're blindfolded and someone else is telling us where to hit. So I do see value as much as, and as anyone who knows me can speak to this, is as much as I love giving my opinions on things, I don't know that there's as much value in having us opine for the sake of opining. But I think the real value that I think this commission can serve to the city is serve as kind of a collecting point, if you will, or a mechanism to make sure everyone's on the same page, whether that's kind of in, you know, staff communications and just comments and getting everyone on the same page, or if that is, you know, kind of like Lost Rapids with the occasional, if there's something that's particularly a sticky situation or more of a complex question. I think those are maybe the 2 functions. I don't know that I would, and it seems like it's kind of in alignment with what you're saying, Caleb, but I don't know that all of the kind of developments need to come, for an opinion, but I think specifically those kind of trickier questions are most helpful. And I don't know if there's a process there, what that looks like, whether it's staff's kind of judgment there or something like that. But I think those are the areas that opining serves the most value. But beyond that, just serving as a mechanism to kind of centralize knowledge on what's happening where with parking is the biggest value to me, I think.
Mr. Chair, if I can just sort of ask a
Sorry,
clarifying,
I was looking at commissioners. Go ahead, please.
just ask sort of a clarifying question. I think some of my question is, help me. And again, I think I know it when I see it, but even helping define what tricky is, right? Because your perspective, like I'll just use one of the examples is tricky to the city can be, we don't have enough officers to enforce no parking if you go sign a block. That's tricky for our city coffers because we don't have the employees to do that. It's also tricky maybe for those people that are living there or doing business. So those are the types of things to us. It may be a no brainer. Hey, from a transportation perspective, go sign these 3 blocks, no parking. Oh, you don't have any officers to go write tickets? That's not your purview. That's not your, so that's really kind of what I need to know. And again, I kind of understand what tricky means, but if you can help me define those types of ones where it seems appropriate for your agendas, that will help me.
Yeah, sure. I think to me, and again, I don't want to monopolize the discussion. But I think to me, tricky particularly means, there are clear sacrifices that need to be made. And those sacrifices are in some way addressable by the city. The issue with, well, we wouldn't have the officers to do that. There's kind of like a law of nature issue there that it doesn't really matter necessarily what the commission thinks unless we have budget for more officers, right? And so there are those things like that where if it's the easy answers to questions and helping people out, obviously that's something that staff can take care of. I think also that the fundamental no's are, I think, not as necessary, and there may be valuable as an informational level to say, hey, we can't do this, but someone's asked about this. And that's kind of where staff communications are helpful. I think specifically it's when there's, I don't know, I saw the Movado, there's disagreement between city staff and ACHD staff. There's no clear outcome that is going to be the result. And there's an ask for the commission to maybe place a slight weight on one of the sides of the equation. If the equation is always going to equal one thing, that's where I think it's less of a value that we can provide.
If there's no loser, we don't need to bring it to the commission. Can I, Mr. Chair, again, trying to facilitate, although that's your role, I guess, as chair, but Movado was brought up. And again, there's a letter just as an example. Seems
Before we get into that, and I don't know if we really want to, but let me make a suggestion. It appears to me that there are 2 decisions that need to be made. One is at the city department level. Should the city above our pay grade make a decision? Can these requests go to any department and the decision of that department can be implemented or not? So I think it is a staff department first question that whether it has to go to the mayor or up to the council to make that decision. I believe I hear that you are frustrated that these things are happening, and some you know about it and some you don't. And the city's got a lot of hands in the kitchen, but somebody's taking over cooking one thing and somebody's taking over cooking another one, and somebody finds out, wait a minute, you can't serve that when you serve this. Somebody needs to control this. So I think that's a horrible example, but you know what I mean. But I think there's a department level question about how does the city want to handle this. Then I think the second question is who within the city decides this particular one should be kicked up to the Transportation Commission for their input. Not the decision, because we don't make decisions. We make input. And I personally, like Mr. Song, I would like to work on these. I've got the time to get in the car and go look and to put into it. It's kind of fun. And a lot of times I come up with I know what the answer is to this one, whether Mr. Watson would ever agree with me or not, it's another matter. Others, like two of them we've got today, one of them in particular, I don't have a clue what the answer is, but somebody needs to find one because it's a problem. Does that kind of thinking help you at all?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, and I think there is, some commonality in the comments I've heard thus far from the commissioners. I mean, I think you all are saying essentially the same thing. If staff can handle it and through that process with ACHD, then be on your way. I guess, just clarify, the frustration isn't necessarily, I don't need more to do. I was more inserting myself being frustrated on behalf of the commission, because in years past, it's been, hey, what's going on? We're over here, give us things to do. So I'm general, now I'm not speaking for the city as a whole, but me planning in particular, I'm not necessarily frustrated if something like Movado gets worked out with ACHD in the neighborhood and we don't have to get involved. Great. I have other things to do. So that frustration again was more frustration that it's happening. And hey, remember folks, we have a transportation commission that generally wants to talk about these things. So that's why I'm back to you to say, hey, where's that line? Are you really good if we just go ahead and a block somewhere gets striped no parking? Do you really need to know that? And we can share it in staff communications and off we go. And then, yes, your question too, as that's getting answered, the elevation of these that aren't as cut and dry and there's losers or whatever, or you want to be a advisory board, I can bring those to you. So I think I'm starting to, it really is some clarification to what, I guess maybe as we again continue, do you see yourselves more in that appeal or one of the first stops? And after staff's had and let's just say we can't agree on what the solution is, it is sort of then an appeal process then? I mean, I guess it is almost answering the question. You're later in the process. You're not the first stop. It's not, hey, everyone stop, bring that to the Transportation Commission, assuming it's not a minor, more of a discussion thing. But you guys it does get elevated to you as an advisory board. It's not the first time. It's PD's looked at it, ACHD's looked at it, and we don't really have a nice solution. We need some help solving this problem and we bring it to you all.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lewis.
I think as far as parking issues go, I think we should focus our efforts on those that relate to traffic safety. I think that if there's parking issues where sight distance is blocked, if there are distances where there's not enough room in the road to drive when people are parked on both sides of the road and there's side swipe accidents. Traffic safety issues interest me. But the disputes about someone's parking in front of my house and I own that spot, they shouldn't be here, that doesn't interest me. I'll just say it.
Mr. Chair.
Lancaster, if you don't want to weigh in, I'm going to hold this topic until you do.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Watson, go ahead.
John Wasson, Ada County Highway District. We have a number of different parking scenarios that we look at. Some of them we never see. They're either policy decisions, backdoor decisions, or secret deals between partners. And they happen in the development process. We never see them. The next one is where a neighborhood comes in and says, there's one no parking sign, or there are no parking signs, and I think the street's too narrow. And we go and look at it, and sure enough, the fire marshal said, I approve the street and it's too narrow, and one side has to be posted no parking. You never see that, and I never see that until that one person calls. And then we just go in and we make the hard decision. Parking was restricted on the left side. We're putting in the no parking signs, and too bad. What happens is either the developer or the builders come in after we've installed the no parking signs on dirt, and they go, this doesn't fit the lifestyle of my house. the way I want to build it. They take the pole out, they throw it away, and 3 years later, somebody calls me and says, hey, the sign's not here. We go and fix that. Where I envision the direction for this body to play in is exactly what Commissioner Lewis said, where we have a safety issue or a larger neighborhood issue, like next to a high school where we're taking away parking from 11 blocks for certain hours. Certainly that's a fine thing. But with the removal of parking comes other warts. And the biggest wart is you took away parking, which is what I asked for, but now people are really going fast. So you have to install speed humps on my street. And we get that. And sometimes we say, no, you rip the bandage off, you have to live with it. Others are different. But I think Commissioner Lewis is spot on when he says, when it's a safety issue or something on that order, we do have a process. So let's say the people on Washington Street say, one person says, I want parking removed. We're going to do an investigation. And 95% of the time, the answer is going to be, no, we're not removing the parking on the corner of Lost Rapids and whatchamacallit, because there's not a problem. We don't install a lot of parking restrictions in residential neighborhoods. It's a no-win situation. But if somebody is really insistent, we will give them a petition. And they have to get 75% of their friends and neighbors on that street to sign off on the petition stating, we want parking restricted. We will not allow enclave parking in that scenario. We install timed parking or no parking. So by timed parking, I mean no parking 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I don't do no parking daylight or sunrise to sunset, because as the attorney will say, everybody's got a different opinion of when sunrise is, and the courts won't support that. So I've told people we have to make a decision as to what the times are. The reason we go with times is a police officer can pull up there, look at it, say it's 7:01, the parking says no parking after 7 o'clock, slaps a ticket on it, and he's gone or she's gone. Meridian does not have a parking authority like Boise City does. Boise City installs certain parking restrictions in the area where they have an MLA for that, a master license agreement. And we work with the city of Boise a great deal when they want to post something or when we want to post something. So just a little, there is a process that we have. I totally agree with Commissioner Lewis, and I stand for any questions you guys may have.
One comment I would make on that almost everybody that comes to the city or HDHD wanting to do something one way or the other about parking will claim it's a safety problem. Just like anybody looking at a development anywhere in their site will claim it's a traffic problem if you let them do that. Mr. Lancaster, anything at all?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Good, please.
Been waiting my turn, so thank you for the
It is your
invitation.
turn.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've been doing this long enough to recognize a few recurring themes. One of those being cut through traffic, which I think we're due for some more of that. Parking, school issues from time to time, speed limits from time to time. Those come up frequently enough that they're recurring things, right? So I also think back to actually this commission's predecessor. So I think Mr. Wasson sat about where Commissioner Smith is, and I think I sat about where Commissioner Shoemaker is. And And I think about a parking situation that we discussed back then, which was to restrict parking along Meridian Road adjacent to Settlers Park. And I remember coming to the city council and testifying right there on behalf of that commission. And we ended up with no parking signs in front of the park there. And I think that was one of the better things that I've been involved with here, to be honest. So maybe the best thing that I've been involved with. Meridian Road since been widened and all those signs came out, and that's fine. But my point being is I think this commission has a role to some extent. I tend to agree with Commissioner Lewis also, and Mr. Wasson. Yeah. So, I think we can have a reasonable role, with the things that Caleb said and Commissioner Lewis have said and Mr. Wasson. I don't think we need to see every parking matter, but some that are of important, I think it's appropriate for them to come to us.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Hood, have you gotten anything at all you can make soup out of with this?
Yeah, so just next steps and what I plan to do then, I will share this feedback with the mayor's office as we look to do essentially what you said in sort of question 1 and 2. Here's what I heard from the Transportation Commission, where I think their role can be as we further coordinate with ACHD and John, and maybe we can see what the process and protocol is with the city of Boise, as he just referred to, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel, whatever that looks like with them. Maybe that works for Meridian. So I'll take this feedback. Thank you today. I'll then circle back with you. Either you'll see some things on your agenda, or I'll provide an update on what we have agreed to do both internally with fire, police, planning, mayor's office, others that get these, and then also ACHD, and I'll circle back one way or the other on this. So thank you.
Looking at the clock and our remaining agenda, do we need to do anything with the HOA memo we got on Movado?
It depends on if you think it's a safety issue or not, Mr. Chair. No,
I'm not.
You do not have to do anything.
If the city needs to respond to this communication and we need to weigh in on it, then we'll need to get in the weeds a little bit. I've looked at it. You and I've talked about it. I think you've got a real good handle on what is out there and what they're saying. I'm just wanting that something that comes to this dais with us be answered in some fashion.
So, Mr. Chair, this is actually, it's here again, just sort of as a placeholder, as an example. I do see, so this was sent to us because it was sent to ACHD, and we asked them, hey, when you get these types of things, clue us in. I will use this as the springboard again to have that conversation with the mayor's office, and you may see this again on your agenda saying, hey, this HOA wants to come to your meeting and make their pitch to you, so you can make a pitch to the council that then goes to ACHD and says, yep, go sign it, no parking, or whatever that looks like. So I don't need anything right now unless you have other comments, but again, that was just an example. So.
Mr. Chair, John Wasson, ACHD.
Mr. Wasson.
I know that there are plans at my office right now to install 2 additional no parking signs on Movado around where the small median island is, because right now the no parking signs are one direction only and there is no end to them. So we need to install 2 signs to close that area off to say you can't park here where this knuckle is. But right now, that's all that I am aware of that we are looking at doing. We are still looking at the entirety of Movado.
Okay. Mr. Hood, we maybe move ahead.
You tell me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Then let's do the ex officio updates, and we will start with Mr. Wasson. Anything in the large sense that we don't know about, we want to hear from you?
Sir, John Wasson, Ada County Highway District. Probably one of them is we received a request on Washington Street between Main and Meridian to restrict parking. There are 11 parcels. We received signatures from from 10 of the 11 parcel holders. And they requested parking, I believe it's from 9 to 5. So 0900 to 1700. Because we got the petition back and it was overwhelmingly assigned. We've gone out and dig line, we've made the signs, and we're prepared to move forward unless this body has issues with that.
That's Washington, where to where?
Main to Meridian. It's 535 feet, primarily residential and absentee owners, but there is I think that it's a Shell station on the corner. Jackson Shell Station on the corner.
Okay.
And we're prepared to move forward and post that for no parking. Other than that, we are just spreading love and making people happy.
Good job.
Mr. Chair, I know this is update from our partner agencies. Just one clarification on what Mr. Wasson said. This one has been requested by the mayor's office to hold on. You can certainly chime in. We can look at it, dig a little deeper if you want, but that is something that specifically the mayor's office has asked ACHD to press pause on for right now, just so they can understand impacts. And again, that's one of the things that brought up this whole question. So again, if you have things you want me to share with the mayor's office, that's fine. And this may be back for a more detailed conversation in the future. But nothing out of you, I don't want that to be interpreted that it's okay for ACHD to move forward with placing no parking signs.
I took Mr. Watson's comments as informational. I made a note, and personally, I'm probably going to drive over and take a look at it. But if it needs to come back to us at the next meeting as a question, that'd be okay too.
Mr. Chair,
Klopfenstein.
Mr. Chairman. Question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Watson, you said that dig line's already been called in and the signs are being made. I would say that the ship has sailed if we're trying to wait a month on that. Maybe not. ACHD sometimes takes their time.
Mr. Chair, John Wasson, the signs have been made. We're holding on to them. We can always take the sheathing off and do something else with them. In this case, it is not a safety issue. This is strictly the neighborhood doesn't want people parking on their street. And so we are prepared to hold until the cows come home or the city and our leadership come to some agreement.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Klopfenstein. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Leela Klopfenstein, representing Compass. We continue doing various planning efforts at the agency, one of which is the transportation funding study that has kicked off and is underway. Another study that is underway is the safety action plan. That is a comprehensive regional safety plan looking at existing issues. And you'll be hearing more about that as we get further into the study. And then one thing that Austin Miller mentioned when he sat in the November meeting was that phase 1 applications are open at Compass. So those are for transportation projects seeking federal funds. The due date for those project applications is tomorrow at midnight. I'm not sure if that's more of a staff update, but just wanted to make mention. And that's all from me.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Carson, welcome.
Thank you. So back at the school district, we are starting to kick off some planning for what the safety busing areas might look like for the next school year. With all the road changes that have been happening, there's a few different schools we're going to need to look at for that. And then also excited to partner with Compass on the Safe Streets and Roads for All project that Leela mentioned. And that's the only updates I have.
Thank you, ma'am. So your purview is broader than just busing.
That's correct, Mr. Chair. I'm doing the transportation, overseeing the transportation and also doing the planning.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Taysom, you have anything for us?
Nothing really special. We are continuing to move forward with the service change, finalizing stop locations for our summer 2024 service change. We'll be very soon ordering those new signs with the new colors that were mentioned by Kate at the last meeting, as well as some information holders. So there'll be additional information available at each bus stop. We're going with Idaho Correctional Industries on that, so it's very exciting. And I think that with the upcoming service change, you'll definitely see an improvement in service levels in the city of in downtown Meridian, especially with the connections to Boise that are going to be provided by the rerouting.
Mr. Price, anything?
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Some of you are likely aware already, but I wanted to give a mention of it. We have a project on I-84 from Meridian to Eagle, an auxiliary lane project that we're working on. Currently, it's in design. It's going to be delivered in the spring of 2024. There are no construction funds identified yet, so the earliest construction would be fall of next year, or later, of course, depending on funding. There will be a public outreach after the first of the year. Just says winter of 2024, so I'm assuming sometime, January, February, March. And it will include adding an on-ramp lane at Meridian, adding the auxiliary lane between Meridian and Eagle, and then adding a second off-ramp lane at Eagle. That's all I have.
Not soon enough. Thank you. We're down to staff communications, Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so staff communications begin on page 41 in the packet. I am prepared. I put together just a quick exhibit. I know Mr. Wasson is familiar with this one as well, but let me pull up a picture for y'all to look at. So we are on the southwest corner of Linder and Chinden. There's a complex here. There's also a school. This is the parking lot for the school. Everest Lane being a private lane, goes out to, I want to call it Fox Run again, Long Lake, back to the west, and then connects up kind of de facto through some drive aisles out to Linder and up to Chinden. Really the question, the request, this is the first one again on page 41 of this parent that has kids that go to the Challenger School that I just pointed out. This is the dollar store, some restaurants, some multi-tenant buildings, cell phones. I can't remember who all else. Some other, again, just multi-tenant buildings out here and some more that are coming, coffee, those types of things. Seems to be some confusion amongst motorists who has the right of way at some of these intersections here. There is a public street from the residential subdivision to the south that almost immediately then turns again into the drive aisle network for this commercial project. I don't know exactly at what conflict points most of those conflicts are occurring.
Mr. Hood, if I could interrupt you.
Sure.
Behind the dollar store, there is a building, a new building that's not shown that, or okay, is it beside it? Anyway, that the east-west drive that crosses North Gertie has businesses that open onto it now. So my point being that there's more traffic along the east-west street that North Gertie tees into than this photograph would indicate.
Yeah, you can kind of see some goat trail type people have
That-
war tracks here, but there are
That's now a
buildings.
paved
Yeah.
collector, internal collector, private thingy.
Yeah, so again, that's sort of the, and we just talked about this with parking. I mean, this is more of an FYI for you. I did talk to the chair about this. I do know the developer that still owns most of these lots out here. I don't know if he's aware of it. Sergeant Smith, in fact, I'll just read to you real quick. She looked at the packet before and she thought she wouldn't be able to make this, but she said, I saw the letter from the citizens referencing no stop signs on the shopping complex located at the southwest corner of Linder Chinden. I was asked to look into that a few weeks ago, and she reached out to Joshua, who's in the mayor's office, and determined it is all private property to include West Everest Lane. It's private lane all the way out to Long Lake. It's my understanding it would have been the builder's responsibility to sign. So just wanted to share that with you. Again, I have a contact with the builder, the developer out there, and again, I had a very brief email exchange with Mr. Wasson. This isn't necessarily, again, most of this is private, with the exception of the Gertie Place to the south that feeds into this, or vice versa. This is a fairly major intersection here out to Linder with the fire station and Winco across the road and whatnot, but it's very limited as far as ACHD's authority and responsibility out here. So if there's anything else or direction that the commission wants, if you're like, hey, we need a stop sign here or there or none at all, I'll take that type of feedback. My intention is to just follow up with Mr. Wiley, who still again owns most of this, and say, hey, can you put up some stop signs somewhere, and just sort of leave it at that.
As y'all may not have become aware, I tend on single citizen issue comment complaints to take them with a jaundiced eye, looking for how big a problem is it. I did go out and ride through this. My wife and I go to the dollar store a fair amount. And my conclusion on this one was it's a mess. And somebody needs to do something, whether it's ACHD, who says it's not ours to do, or planning department that says, well, it's not ours to do, it's the developer. Somebody needs to do something, because there's a lot of traffic out there and it's kind of an anthill. So I'll stay tuned to see what can be worked out. I suggested to Mr. Hood that Mr. Watson, maybe a cup of coffee for you might get you some hints on what might be done with it, but not officially from ACHD. So anybody else, any opinions on it or thoughts? Have you looked at it?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith.
I guess I'm in alignment with, I'm in agreement with what you're saying. I also wonder if this is maybe something to look at regarding future developments, whether I think particularly specifically the issue to my eyes seems to be the issue of there not being a stop sign in an area where the assumed behavior is to be able to continue driving straight. That seems to be, to me, the biggest, not only the most likely area, but also the highest, likely highest speed location of an incident. And I just wonder if there is maybe a standard that could be put in place to say that, hey, if this kind of thing, on Everest, for example, or down these areas, I guess Everest isn't as much of an issue. But these locations where a driver might look at this and a reasonable driver can assume that they're entitled to continue going straight without stopping when they're not, that might be, and I don't know how I would word that, but I wonder if there's maybe something we can do to kind of make this more of a standard going forward. Because I think that I agree this is a mess, but also I wonder how many edge cases are there where maybe it's not quite the mess, but there still is something that we could have maybe had the developer do better on the front end. This was my thought.
Mr. Chair, and maybe there is, I'm not a traffic engineer. I know enough transportation because I've been doing it so long to somewhat be dangerous, but I don't have all the manuals memorized and I don't have those magical letters behind my name. The other thing that I think kind of makes this difficult, at least with now with my planning hat on, when I see this, this comes in as an 8-lot subdivision and we don't know who's going to be there and where the drive aisles are going to go and all that. It's building up over time and lot lines get moved and then they put a drive aisle in. And it's like, oh, this building, this business wants this much of a lot and they want their building to be here. It is sort of, you don't, again, like parking, you won't know a bad one until you see it. I don't know how we head this off earlier because there's no way the developer or anyone else could have known this is how, I mean, BlackRock got smushed in there, right? Like we didn't know that was going to be BlackRock with a dual lane drive through. So I don't know what those standards are. And maybe there is somewhat at ACH, again, realizing these aren't public streets, but if there are standards and we can do that, I'm all for it. I don't know how we do that though. I'm not sure how we implement something like that and at what point. So I agree. And it's sort of, again, somewhat magical. I mean, you see these other commercial projects that do put up stop signs. I think they have someone that knows traffic and says, hey, you need to stop east-west here and let north-south have the right of way. It usually doesn't take an accident or two or a crash or two or city staff going, hey, have you thought about putting up stop signs? Because we're getting a bunch of complaints.
You've got a grid here with 5 north-south lanes. And at the moment, 2 east-west, possibly going to have a third. And I'm not counting the lane parallel to the stores that face Chinden.
And Mr. Chair, I would just,
somebody needs to do something.
well, Mr. Chair, I would say that's not unusual. It's pretty typical. And again, looking at it and driven out there, maybe not, we don't go as often maybe to the dollar store as you do, but I have been out there and I can kind of tell what the major ones are, even just by looking at this. I mean, you have protected on this east-west is more of a major access than this one. And this is more of a main north-south, right? I mean, you can kind of, you just sense that, right? It's probably carrying more volume than this or even this one, but this segment is an extension of this. So someone going straight here, again, who has the right of way at this intersection? It's not super clear. And this is maybe just me, right? I'm trying to pay attention. And if I'm at the intersection first, then I assume and I don't have to stop or yield, then I've got the right of way. And if you T-bone me, then I was there first and I had the right of way and I won't T-bone you because it's one of those things, right? So, but again, it's not uncommon to have multiple north, south, and east-west drive aisles in shopping centers. And you yield to them, even though it's not signed. I mean, you have those, it is quite frequent. It's uncommon to not have any stop signs within a complex though.
Maybe it's because this one is so small. If you look to the other side of Lunder, you've got a huge area where you've got a lot more sight lines for various things.
I mean, here's just an example across the way, right? This isn't stop. You don't have to stop here.
But you've got
who has the right of way?
You've got a lot more length to view before you pull out than you do over on the one on the west. Anyway.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Just speaking to Caleb, speaking to your kind of thought of at what point I'm putting on kind of my P&Z hat and looking at the legislative capacity. And I'm thinking, I mean, could you do something for, if there's a DA or a CUP, prior to certificate of occupancy or something like that, kind of put in a standard or at least maybe some guidance for staff when looking at these things to say, hey, let's make sure we analyze this for conflict points where maybe the standard behavior. One thing I noticed also with the east side versus the west side is there's also a clear difference in the length and the shape of the road. So that kind of, to me, implies a little bit more of a, if I see, a longer road, I'm going to assume someone's going to be behaving in a manner that they've gathered more speed or something like that. And I'm going to be more likely to yield or stop even if it's not signed. And so I think, whether that becomes the responsibility of the property owner or of the developer who wants to put in a building there, as that kind of takes shape, that can enable someone, at least in the process, the development process to say, hey, this is starting to arise as a likely conflict point. Let's make sure that there's something here.
I will definitely look, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, look for opportunities to avoid this into the future, whether it be standards or through conditional use permits, development agreements. And those are a little bit easier when there is a specific, application before us for a drive-through. And it's like, hey, this drive-through is exiting onto a major drive. I'll put a stop sign up for your drive-through lane or something like, those case-by-case ones we can attack a little bit differently than a retrofit where we don't have any authority to go out there and put stop signs in. But we'll look for that. I think, yeah, this was, again, just an example of someone that's frustrated, and I get it, and they're trying to do the right thing. And I think I can work with this developer and say, hey, for a few $100 or whatever, can you go put some stop signs in, please? So.
Mr. Chair, John Wasson, ACHD.
Yes, sir.
As Caleb so aptly said, we don't have a whole lot of jurisdiction out there. I might invite conversation with the police about enforceability should there be an incident or an accident out there, because typically on private property, they're not going to respond. So that's one issue. The other one is, and I know it may be incredibly heavy-handed, but maybe no occupancy permit is granted until they make a couple of changes out there. And that might be within the city purview, not within our purview, but maybe within the city planning purview.
Anyone else? Mr. Lancaster.
Mr. Chairman, I have a technical comment and then a observational comment. So first, the technical one. I learned that I have magical letters today, so you can call me Wizard Lancaster now. Just kidding. Yeah. So there are certain guidelines for stop sign use. They shouldn't be used indiscriminately. Overuse breeds disrespect. Stop sign around the corner from my house, which I treat like a yield sign always, right? So stop signs are appropriate intersection treatments, yield signs are appropriate intersection treatments, and no control is appropriate depending on use and context and all of those, volumes mostly. So that's my technical answer. My observational answer is Meridian is still a very fast growing city. This part of town is growing, as we see from the photo.
Different when I go home this afternoon than when I came here this afternoon.
Exactly. So it seems like these issues seem to pop up when these are new developments, and they seem to kind of go away when they're not new developments anymore. So I think some of this works itself out over a little bit of time. Whether this is that'll be the case here or not, but today we've largely been talking about areas of the city around the fringe, right? The developing areas, not in the established areas. So I think there's something to that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lewis, you're gonna talk more than 1 minute, which is gonna put
I
us-
was going to say,
it's gonna put us to 5:30. We'll need a motion to extend.
I was going to move that we extend 10 minutes, please.
Thank you. Have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Smith, motion is second to extend for, you say 5 minutes?
I said 10, but I'm.
Yeah, no, 10's fine.
10.
We can always quit before 10. We don't have to sit here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, 10 minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Anyone else on this topic?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one quick comment on this. If we're really interested in digging into this, I'd like to see the traffic impact study for this. That's all.
Mr. Chair. Sorry.
I'll shut my mouth now and ask Mr. Smith to comment.
Oh, sorry. I thought that was it.
No, that's it. Yeah.
If you were going to comment on that.
No.
Okay. It was a separate point. So I didn't want to.
Not touching that one.
Okay. No, my thought is just to Mr. Lancaster or Commissioner Lancaster. I agree. These tend to be on the fringe, but we're also seeing a lot of infill, development that's happening now. Is a lot of the kind of easy development targets have kind of been hit. And so there's, I do think that there's, obviously any city is going to see development and change over time in perpetuity, but we are seeing this, I mean, not this specific issue, but things that could, create these issues kind of cropping up as also we're seeing rezones in kind of the Old Town area. The future land use map is changing a little bit, and there are becoming more pockets of density. So I think something, whether it's just a simple kind of decision framework for staff and recommending, again, the enforceability questions is a totally different thing. But I think kind of figuring something out for future developments to try to, minimize this issue as much as possible would be awesome. But again, if I could wave a magic wand.
Well, I think this is a topsy just grew thing. It wasn't, I'd have no idea if planning had any idea what this was going to grow into when they made the first approval of any part of it. I think Mr. Hood has acknowledged that we need to kind of think about these in the future when we see something that could end up in something like this, and see if there's some way to anticipate what might need to be done with it, or how to hang some occupancy approvals on certain issues. Anyone else before we move on? Okay, Mr. Hood, you're still on staff communications with a couple of more items.
Yeah, I don't know that I even need to highlight either of the other two. One was just an update on some potential aesthetics artwork for the Linda Road overpass. And the last one, I just thought, again, more parking. So potential restaurant coming downtown that is looking to get a waiver from providing any parking. So just to clue you in, and with that, I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Yeah, I looked at the 127 Saloon Restaurant item, and seems relatively straightforward. I don't know that we need to weigh in unless somebody gives him the wrong answer and he wants to appeal to somebody.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lewis.
I do have a comment on the next, the communication on the Linda overpass. And in particular, in the third paragraph where it's talking about the foundation for the public art. I don't know where exactly this public art would be, but this first sentence in the third paragraph concerns me greatly. Talking about a tall concrete platform. So if someone veered off the road and hit it, they'd hit a concrete platform, not the artwork. Yeah,
You need to
I read
realize this is
that.
coming from the Arts and Culture Coordinator.
Yes, I read that and my jaw dropped. Why is the city wanting to put a hazard that someone could hit and seriously injure or kill themselves?
Mr. Hood, I'm going to look to you to answer that one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the premise of the question, certainly that isn't what we're, trying to do. And I think anything that does go there will need to meet, breakaway standards and all those things for what we talked about earlier with boulders. So again, putting that in context a little bit, this is someone that's concerned about artwork and protecting that. Yes, certainly life and safety too. That is not, but again, it will have to be in a location and designed as such to meet what regulations, specifications for that. But to be clear, we are looking at putting some things in the medians in the road. So I think that's, that is something to, I've seen some of that even in Boise. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, just some of the neighborhood identifier type of monument signs and whatnot. It'd be very similar to some of those things that you see in the various neighborhoods, not in design, but just in location. On some of those things. So it's a point well taken. And again, that's why there's a backstop there with ACHD and some of their engineers that are looking at those things to say, yeah, we can't have a solid concrete foundation that either on impact is going to stop and the art falls on their car or whatever. It'll be.
Of course, there was someone at ACHD who said rock boulders in the meeting.
I'm not going to go there.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner
Mr. Lawson,
Lewis
come on into the ring.
allegedly said,
True.
we don't have confirmation or denial that anybody at ACHD said that.
True. Thank you.
Mr. Hood, refresh my memory. Who is the design agency for this structure, for the roadway and the overpass?
Mr. Lewis, Mayor, Keller, I think is the name of the,
No, I mean agency.
oh, ACHD is leading the effort. It's an ACHD project, but they've subcontracted out Keller to do the design. Is that your question, Mr. Chair?
Okay, so it's not an ITD, it's an ITD approval to overpass, but an ACHD to design.
Yeah, yes, ACHD is leading it. ITD is also at the table to review some of as far as the bridge structure goes, they're making sure it meets all the federal and state requirements for the bridge structure, yes.
Yeah, and then who is that? Would it Keller Engineering's involved? Okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah. Guys.
Anything else, Mr. Hood?
No, sir.
Okay, folks, good meeting. You've got the list of future topics that you can look at and look forward to. I don't have anything else. Anyone else have something?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lancaster.
as I recall by ordinance or bylaw, I can't remember which one, January is also election day for the commission, for your seat, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, okay.
So I think that is an appropriate future topic as well.
Mr. Hood's making a note to remember to do that.
And Mr. Chair, a couple of things as we move towards adjournment. If you'll look on there, our next meeting is January 8th. The first meeting in January is the first Monday, and that's a holiday. So we will not be meeting the first Monday. So it's actually a special meeting, if you will, and that's the second Monday of the month. But yes, I will put elections of a chair and vice chair. So be thinking about that here in the next month or so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
to that end, I will not be present at the next meeting. If someone else would like to take the vice chair spot, I'm happy to yield that. If no one does, feel free to put me up as whatever. I'm happy to do whatever. Just want to make that clear since I won't be at the next meeting. So yeah, it's for the taking. But
Yeah.
please don't do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Be aware of the Rotary Club snake in the grass, or whatever you want to call it. Anything else from anyone? Motion to adjourn. Mr. Lewis, second was Mr. Leclerc. Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all.